In this video, I'm going to take you through how to use audience insights to analyze your campaigns and in particular look at the saturation of your audience targeting and to look at the overlap between your audience as well. The reason why this is important is because audience overlap within a single account will mean that the ad sets are competing with each other to have the ad delivered into the auction. So for any one given user, they can only see one ad at a given time from your account. If you're running multiple accounts, then you do run into the problem of competing with yourself. Within one single account, however, you have the ability to actually see whether that's actually happening across ad sets, but also to see how saturated your audience is. And this is actually really, really useful to understand where the problem is between your ad set or your creative when things are not going as well as they used to as well. So let me just take you through the example here. The way to select your delivery insights is to make sure that you have selected the column in your Ads Manager report. So let me just quickly show you here. It's under this option here, delivery, and just make sure that's checked. At the campaign level, it will look like this. So you can see whether the campaign is active or not, and that's all it gives you at the campaign level. However, the magic is at the ad set level. So let's just click down into this campaign here. And now if I scroll across, you can see that the delivery here, whilst it tells me active or inactive, will also give me a link to see delivery insights. So you can only see that for live ad sets. Also, if I just hover over it, it does explain that you need a minimum of 500 impressions in the last 7 days to be able to see delivery insights. So I'm just going to click through and show you what that looks like. So this is the delivery insights section. You can only access it this way. So at the moment there isn't a link anywhere else to be able to go into this section. So make sure you've selected that in your campaigns, in your ad set columns, and then drill down for the ad set that does have more than 500 impressions. So here you can see there's a few options at the top. These options just give you different views on your data, but the interesting links are actually below here. So audience saturation, which tells you what kind of reach you've already hit within a given audience. So let's say, for example, you have an audience size of 1 million. At some point, depending on how you are growing your account and scaling, there's a chance that every single person in your ad set, in your target audience, will have seen your ad at least once. So if I look at this particular ad set here, at the moment, and looking at the 14th of February in this example, this ad set has reached 23% of the total audience. What that means is, as I'm scaling up, if I see that my spend is going up, but I'm not reaching more people within the audience, it could be that I need to test different objectives, or I need to change up my optimized pixel to try and reach more people. And this is where the strategy is related to running. For example, if you run a website conversion campaign, to run page post engagement alongside it, video views, to reach more people in an audience. On the flip side, if you've reached 100% of your audience already, and you're still looking to scale, which is completely possible, then really the steer there is to change up your creative. So by this point, everyone in that audience pool has seen your ad at least once. If you're seeing declining performance, the first thing to do is refresh your creatives, try different angles, try different formats out, and see if you can reach the people who have seen the ad and not converted in a completely different way. So don't give up necessarily on the audience, especially if you've seen some good performance before and you are scaling up. Have a look at your audience reach ratio. A, see what scope there is to increase budgets and reach more people within the audience, or B, if you've reached everyone already, start changing up that creative as well. So the main thing I'm looking at here is the audience reach ratio. And interestingly, the data also shows you what ratio of the audience have seen the ad for the first time as well. So this will decline over time because more and more people are seeing your ad. But as a ratio of people that are being served up ads, how many have actually seen the ad for the first time as well, which is good when you've got a higher ratio here, so you're reaching new people. So let's say, for example, if I had capped at audience ratio of 23%, for example, but this was on the decline, then I know that my targeting and especially my optimization is a bit too tight. and I'm hitting the same people over and over, especially if this doesn't increase, then I need to look at different objectives and different optimizations as well. And you can see the impressions and cumulative reach here. So this ad set, you can probably work out the size of the audience from this based on the fact that I've reached 23% and how many more I can still reach here as well. So this graph up here shows you the cumulative reach over time. The date periods are limited to 7 days, 14 and 28 at the moment, which is a bit of a shame, especially if you want to look at historic data beyond that. So make sure that you are looking at your data when you need to, not, waiting a month and saying, I want to see how my audience insights looks for last month, for example. Keep a close eye on this, especially when you are scaling, especially when you start to see a decline in performance, to figure out whether it's the audience or the creative and what strategies to use as well. So audience saturation, keep a key eye on that. However, the other part of this is audience overlap. What audience overlap allows you to do is to see, first of all, what percentage of your audience is overlapping in total with other ad sets. So to take this example here, if I scroll back, we have the situation where 21%, 23, 15% were overlapping. Best practice, and it's down to experience and opinion as well, I try and keep my overlap rate to below 30%. There have been cases where I've done 40, 50% and things have still been okay. But to be on the safe side, keep it below 30%, which means that the ad sets are not competing massively. So 30%, roughly 1 in 3 ads will compete with another ad set in the auction. If you can keep it down, it's even better. It means that the ad sets are working exclusively and getting more impressions, allowing to spend more and hopefully to generate more revenue off the back of that as well. Here, for example, you can see that there was a big drop in the overlap rate. We made some changes on this date on the audience, which meant that although there's 100% overlap here, overlap overall on the auction was very low, because although the audience here in this particular ad set, so these are the 3 biggest ad sets that are overlapping, was at 100%, it was a tiny proportion of this ad set's audience as well. So up here, you can see that this is a 1 to 5% lookalike, and because it's such a broad audience, there's a good chance that this particular ad set, because it is a 1% audience, has 100% overlap. However, this ad set is optimizing for larger parts of that lookalike. So I'm not massively concerned with this particular ad set. This one, however, will probably end up having stunted reach, because this ad set will be getting more of that reach, especially because I know that this ad set is performing better. So my concern at this level would be to take this ad set and figure out what to do next. Actually, what we did on the 13th is pulls that out because this ad set was performing better, and then I brought it down to no overlap. So as you scan across, let's take, for example, this date here where we have a 23% overlap. You can see which ad sets were actually overlapping. So you can then, for example, open that in a new tab, look at the targeting between that ad set and this ad set that you're looking at, and see if there's any opportunity to maybe just move the targeting over slightly. In this case, it's borderline 35%, but as you can see here, that started to increase, and therefore we made the decision to pulls that ad set out, especially based on performance where this ad set was performing better. And here on the last 2 columns, you get an idea of how the other ad sets are doing as well. So main thing is to keep an eye on the overall overlap rate, especially when you're seeing stunted performance and when you're starting to scale up your spend as well. Because there could be situations, for example, if you use the horizontal scaling strategy where you make duplicates of your ad sets to be able to scale up faster, you will definitely have audience overlaps. And often what happens is, let's say you have a winning ad set and you make, let's say, 5, 10 duplications of that winning ad set, the original sometimes suffers, and that's fine. You can pause that out, leave it on pause as your insurance policy, but the overlap rate will probably dictate which ad sets are having the biggest impacts on each other. And then Facebook will, especially if you are running multiple ad sets to exactly the same audience, will decide which ad set gets served more than the other one. So you may want to just let Facebook do that and pulls out the ones that are not working. Or, for example, if you split out Facebook and Instagram, and the audiences are being hit up in Instagram and on Facebook, you might, for example, want to reduce the spend in your Facebook one if you want more reach in your Instagram campaign, because don't forget that when Facebook does its targeting, it's at the people level. So you might get the case where, based on the fact that you can only hit an individual person up to a specific number of times in a day, you may be getting more impressions on one platform, for example, than the other. So you might find that you're getting far more impressions on Facebook than Instagram, just based on you splitting your budget and Facebook deciding when to serve that ad to that individual person. However, your strategy might be to push more people into your Instagram ads because Stories is doing well. So you might want to manipulate your budget somewhat to give a bit more of a steer as to kind of how your spend is being shared by Facebook as well. And maybe even pausing the Facebook one if, for example, you're seeing better performance in Instagram. So it's just something to keep an eye on, because that overlap rate is looking at the people level, not by placement, for example. So if you are seeing that kind of split in terms of the overlap rate for those ad sets, then you need to make a decision on that. Do I split my budgets? Do I pause that ad set? Etc., etc. So to recap, the two key areas I'm looking at here are audience saturation and audience overlap. Account activity history is quite limited, so there's not too much that you can actually delve into. There is this option to show activity, so you can show key things that had happened. As you can see, the data here is cut off. It's not very accessible to actually see exactly what's happened. And also within the data here, there's very limited insight as to kind of what the changes were. So I think the concept of it is good. So if, for example, I wanted to look at a particular date and see what changes were made, ideally I'd like to be able to click this, drill down, see what changes were made, and maybe relate that back to my performance and see whether it was a budget change, audience change, etc. But at the moment, that isn't available. So right now, I focus on saturation and overlap when I feel there's a need to look at that on a performance basis. So this isn't necessarily a tool that you need to use every single day, but it's more of a troubleshooting tool to figure out if performance has dropped, why is that, and then to make a decision off the back of that.